Before we go any further into the story of the man who became Atlanta's most dangerous secret, I need you to pause for a moment. Subscribe to this channel. Tap that notification bell so you never miss what history tried to erase. And drop a comment below telling me what state or city you're listening from. I want to see where the truth seekers are gathering tonight. This isn't just a story, it's a reckoning, and I want to know where it's echoing. Now, let's uncover what Atlanta tried to bury. There are secrets pressed deep into Southern soil, secrets so volatile that even seasoned historians tiptoe around them. In the opulent quarters of antebellum Atlanta, between Peachtree Street and the slave markets near Decatur Street, 17 plantation dynasties unraveled within 8 months in the year 1850. Not from plague, not from bankruptcy, not from war. They imploded from the inside, ripped apart by envy, scandal, violence, and a consuming obsession. All of it traced back to one man who, by every rule of that society, should have been invisible. The auction hall hummed with low, restless energy as Housetrade adjusted his coat and stepped forward, his composure snapping back into place. "Fletcher," he announced crisily, every syllable polished. Literate, exceptionally trained at the Beaumont estate, no record of rebellion, no history of flight. Will begin at $800. The response was immediate. Bids fired from every corner. Numbers leapt without hesitation. Constance had expected interest. She had not expected war. Within seconds, she found herself battling 3 determined buyers. And among them stood the one woman she never managed to escape in any arena of society. Rebecca Sutherland, 1215. A murmur swept the crowd. When the figure struck $2,000, even veteran attendees shifted their weight. That was an astonishing price for a male house servant. One bidder faltered, then another, until only 2 remained. Constance and Rebecca, 2,300. Rebecca inhaled to continue, but her husband's hand closed firmly around her wrist. Gentle, public, final. Color rushed into her face. Frustration burned there, along with something deeper, something Constance could not name. "Sold to Mrs. Hawthorne," Fletcher declared, slamming the gavel down like a gunshot. As Constance completed the paperwork, Rebecca approached, her smile stretched thin as silk pulled too tight. "You've made quite an investment," she said. "I do hope he rewards your confidence." "I'm certain he will," Constance replied. Yet the words rang strangely in her own ears. She had paid nearly twice what she intended, driven by a force she didn't understand. The young man, identified in the estate records as Gabriel, arrived at the Hawthorne residence that very afternoon. Judge Hawthorne barely lifted his eyes. He nodded once at his wife's selection and retreated to his study, the matter settled. Below stairs, however, was another story. Martha, who had commanded the kitchen for 20 years, took one look at Gabriel and instinctively crossed herself, an old gesture from a childhood she rarely acknowledged. "That one," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "is trouble." Then, more quietly, "Beautiful things always are." She was correct, though not in any way she could possibly foresee. Gabriel's first weeks unfolded in deceptive calm. He served dinners flawlessly. He received visitors with quiet confidence. His movements were smooth, economical, nearly elegant. The judge praised his posture. Constance privately celebrated her wisdom. Margaret began inventing reasons to summon him far more often than necessary. The first fracture appeared in late May. Rebecca Sutherland arrived unannounced. She spoke of charity planning, of seating arrangements, of floral themes, but her attention betrayed her. Her eyes drifted again and again to Gabriel as he poured tea. "You must allow me to borrow him for my garden party," she said, the urgency beneath her voice unmistakable. "I simply must have the best presentation in Atlanta." Refusal rose sharp and immediate in Constance's throat. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. He's still learning the rhythms of our household." Rebecca smiled, but nothing about her gaze was warm. She returned 3 more times that week, each visit wrapped in excuses more transparent than the last. Then June brought Caroline Pembroke, wealthy, respectable, generous to every public cause. Where Rebecca burned, Caroline concealed. She drew Gabriel into gentle conversation while he worked, asking about his education, his reading, his opinions on literature. Her tone suggested refinement, almost maternal curiosity. Almost. "I have never encountered a servant who can discuss Shakespeare," she told Constance. "Where did he learn?" "Beaumont had unusual standards for their staff," Constance replied, aware of how little she truly knew. That evening, the judge mentioned, with open confusion, that Caroline had approached him at the courthouse. She offered $3,000, $500 more than they had paid. "I told her he wasn't for sale," he said. Extraordinary behavior from such a rational woman. It was Margaret who finally spoke what everyone else avoided. She found her mother in the morning room, cheeks flushed, voice trembling between anger and revelation. "Every woman who comes to this house comes to see him," she said. "They disguise it as visits, invitations, charity. But they can barely look anywhere else." In auction ledgers, his existence was reduced to a line of ink. Property number 447, male, approximately 23 years of age, exceptionally comely, housebroken. But what those dry, clinical records failed to capture was the effect of his presence. How hardened businessmen lost their judgment in a single conversation. How respectable wives abandoned caution. How daughters raised in refinement risked everything for a glance. He didn't storm the city with power or wealth. He destabilized it with something far more dangerous, charisma no chain could restrain. City officials quietly sealed away the incident reports. Church leaders refused to address the whispers from their own pews. Even newspapers that thrived on scandal suddenly developed restraint when it came to printing his name. Before we continue, subscribe. Hit that notification bell and tell me in the comments what city or state you're watching from, because stories like this were never meant to travel. And yet, here you are. In 1850, Atlanta stood at a volatile crossroads in the American South. It was no longer just a modest rail outpost. It was a rising titan of commerce. Railroad money and cotton fortunes were reshaping its skyline and its ambitions. The Western and Atlantic Railroad had transformed a modest settlement into a booming trade artery where wealth materialized overnight, and reputations disintegrated just as quickly. The city's elite built grand residences along Whitehall Street and Marietta Road. Behind polished doors and manicured hedges lived families whose prosperity depended entirely on enslaved labor, labor rendered deliberately invisible in polite conversation. In drawing rooms filled with crystal decanters and imported carpets, no one spoke of the hands that sustained their luxury. Then came the spring of 1850. An oppressive humidity settled over the city earlier than usual. Magnolia blossoms opened too soon, their thick perfume saturating the air and blending with coal smoke from the rail yards and the metallic scent of Georgia's red clay. The atmosphere felt charged, restless. In the affluent district known as Quality Hill, where Atlanta's most influential families resided, rivalry simmered beneath every pleasantry. The competition was unspoken, but relentless. Wives and daughters measured themselves against one another constantly. The splendor of their estates, the precision of their gardens, the exclusivity of their soirees, and perhaps most revealing of all, the refinement and appearance of the enslaved people who staffed their households. Among these families, the Hawthornes reigned supreme. Judge Nathaniel Hawthorne, 52 years old, with silvered hair and a commanding courtroom presence, served on Georgia's superior court. He owned 3 thriving cotton plantations across neighboring counties and wielded influence that extended far beyond legal chambers. His word carried weight in banking houses and state assemblies alike. His wife, Constance Hawthorne, had been raised in Charleston society and carried her aristocratic pedigree like a crown. She never allowed Atlanta's newer money families to forget that her lineage predated their fortunes. Poised, calculating, and fiercely protective of her standing, she curated her household as meticulously as a museum exhibition. Their daughter, Margaret Hawthorne, 20 years old, was widely regarded as the most sought-after young woman in Atlanta. Educated, graceful, and strikingly beautiful, she was engaged to Robert Cunningham, heir to a powerful shipping empire. The union promised to merge 2 formidable fortunes. It was Constance Hawthorne who made the decision that would set everything in motion. Against her usual custom, she attended the spring auction herself at the market near Decatur Street. Normally, such transactions were handled discreetly by her husband's overseer, but whispers had traveled through parlors and private teas about a particular individual arriving from a failed estate in Savannah. The rumors were vague, but persistent. Curiosity, sharpened by competition, drew her there personally. The auction house overflowed that morning. Plantation owners, speculators, and domestic buyers crowded shoulder to shoulder. The air was suffocating, thick with sweat, tension, and the quiet terror of those awaiting sale. Constance positioned herself near the front, lace fan fluttering in controlled rhythmic movements. Her expression revealed nothing. Cool, aristocratic detachment perfected over decades. Then property number 447 was led onto the platform. The murmur in the room dissolved into a stunned silence. Even the auctioneer, Horace Fletcher, a coarse, seasoned trader who had overseen hundreds of human sales, hesitated. Words failed him for a fraction of a second. The young man standing beneath the harsh morning light possessed features so striking they seemed sculpted rather than born. High, defined cheekbones, full, deliberate lips, eyes of an arresting amber brown that caught the sunlight streaming through tall windows. His complexion carried the warm tone of honey, hinting at mixed ancestry in a society obsessed with classification. But it wasn't merely his appearance that unsettled the room. It was his posture. Despite the iron clasped around his wrists, he stood upright, shoulders squared, gaze steady. There was an unspoken composure about him, not defiance, not submission, something far more destabilizing, awareness, as though he understood exactly what the room saw when they looked at him. And as the silence stretched, something shifted in that crowded auction hall. Because in that instant, Atlanta's most powerful families were no longer simply buyers. They were witnesses to a force they could neither categorize nor control. It's unseemly. It's obscene. The words burst from the room, harsh and desperate. Constance wanted to reject them. But she had seen it too. Worse, she had begun to see it in herself. she caught herself summoning Gabriel for duties any servant could perform. She discovered her gaze, lingering when she believed she was unobserved, memorizing the clean line of his jaw, the strange way the light seemed to rest in his eyes as if it belonged there. "It's only his appearance," Constance murmured, clinging to the explanation. "Some men are simply blessed with uncommon beauty. It signifies nothing." But she was wrong. It signified everything. By July, denial had become impossible. In 6 weeks, the Hawthorne residence entertained more callers than it had in the previous 6 months. Women who had once treated Constance with polite distance suddenly arrived with gifts, invitations, endless reasons for tea. Gatherings multiplied. Laughter filled rooms that had long stood quiet. Even ladies from families who normally guarded their social rank with ruthless precision began appearing at the door. Judge Hawthorne's patience began to fray. "This house has turned into a public salon," he snapped one evening. "What accounts for this sudden popularity?" Constance had no answer she could safely give. How could she confess that the most respectable women in Atlanta were fluttering around a servant like infatuated schoolgirls? How could she admit she understood them? Because she felt it too. The true crisis arrived on a heavy Thursday night near the end of July. 12 guests filled the dining room. Candles flickered. Crystal chimed. Gabriel moved with the other servants in perfect rhythm between kitchen and table. Constance noticed several women following him openly now, their interest no longer disguised. But one in particular unsettled her. Elizabeth Crane, the banker's elegant, controlled wife, could scarcely follow the conversation. Her plate remained nearly untouched. Her eyes never left Gabriel. When dessert was served, Elizabeth rose abruptly. "I need air," she whispered. Minutes passed. 15. An uneasiness coiled tight in Constance's chest. She excused herself. She found Elizabeth in the corridor near the servants' quarters. Her cheeks were burning, her breath came fast, and she stood directly in Gabriel's path. "Mrs. Crane," Constance said, her voice sharp as glass. "Are you unwell?" Elizabeth turned. There was something frantic in her expression, something unraveling. "I was searching for the powder room," she stammered. "I must have mistaken the door." How unusual. The following morning, Elizabeth's husband arrived. Humiliation had carved his face into stone. "My wife has confessed something deeply troubling," he told the judge behind closed doors. "She claims your servant made improper advances." Gabriel was summoned at once. He entered calm but alert. "Sir, I have approached no one," he said steadily. "I have carried out my duties with respect." "My wife insists otherwise," Crane replied, though doubt trembled in every word. "She is prepared to file a formal complaint." Judge Hawthorne's expression hardened. "I find it curious," he said slowly, "given that my wife witnessed Mrs. Crane obstructing my servant outside his quarters." The accusation collapsed. Crane's fury drained, replaced by mortification. "Elizabeth has not been herself," he muttered. Perhaps we should forget this." But it could not be forgotten, because Elizabeth Crane was not alone. And just when it seemed the situation could grow no stranger, Atlanta tipped toward hysteria. If this story is tightening around you, pass it to someone who loves a good dark mystery. Support the channel with a like and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Because what followed made scandal look merciful. Within days, 2 more women of impeccable reputation approached Judge Hawthorne. Each came privately. Each brought money. Each offered more than the last. The judge refused them all. Disturbance had begun to replace irritation. "Something is profoundly wrong," he told Constance. "These are wives, mothers, women of standing, and they are behaving like—" He faltered. "I don't even have a word for it." Constance did. But speaking it aloud would mean facing the truth. And the truth was this: her own fascination with Gabriel was no longer weakening. It was growing. Sleep abandoned Constance. She began waking in the darkest hours of the night, heart racing, mind already circling the same forbidden center. Gabriel, he was in her house, under her roof, breathing the same air. By day she invented errands that placed her near him. She lingered in doorways just to hear the cadence of his voice. She watched the easy precision of his movements, as though studying them might reveal the secret of her captivity. Some stubborn fragment of reason whispered that this was madness. Reason no longer had authority. Whatever had entered her life had overruled it. Martha, meanwhile, had stopped pretending patience. "That boy has to leave," she told Constance flatly. "He's got a hold on people, and it isn't natural." "Don't be ridiculous," Constance snapped. Too quickly. "He's done nothing wrong." "Maybe not knowingly," Martha allowed, "but wrong is happening all the same. You've seen Miss Margaret. You've seen those women at the door." She lowered her voice. "This house is heading toward ruin, ma'am. And you know it." Ruin arrived in August. Robert Cunningham came calling, determined to confront the rumors infecting the city. He found his fiancée seated in the garden with a book open in her lap. She was not reading. Across the path, Gabriel trimmed the roses, sleeves rolled, movements calm and unhurried. The look on Margaret's face ended everything. It was naked, hungry, hopeless. Robert went pale. "I will not marry into a spectacle," he said, ice settling into his voice. "Half of Atlanta is whispering about your family's servant." Margaret did not argue. She did not plead. She simply nodded. Her eyes never left Gabriel. That was the moment Judge Hawthorne surrendered to reality. He summoned his wife and daughter to the study. His face carried the weight of public disgrace. "I'm selling him tomorrow," he said. "Loss or no loss, this ends." Something in Constance's chest seemed to cave inward. "You can't." "I can," he replied. "Our home has become a carnival. Our name is suffering. Your daughter's future is in ruins. Women I've respected for decades behave like lunatics. All because of one servant." "He has done nothing improper," Constance insisted, hearing desperation in her own voice. "That," the judge said quietly, "is precisely the problem. He does nothing, and everything collapses around him." But by morning, selling Gabriel was no longer a simple decision, because before dawn, violence came. Samuel Winters, a prosperous merchant, burst into the servants' quarters with a loaded pistol. Other staff dragged him back. They found him standing over Gabriel's bed, arm trembling, tears streaming down his face. "She dreams about him," Winters sobbed when Judge Hawthorne and the city constable arrived. "Every night she says his name. 20 years of marriage. And now I don't know who she is." Gabriel, shaken but unharmed, said nothing. He didn't need to. The damage was already everywhere. The attack detonated through Atlanta's upper circles. Constable Tom Bridger, a man hardened by theft, scandal, and domestic misery, found himself utterly confounded. "I can't arrest a man for existing," he told the judge. "But the effect he's having, that's real." So Bridger began asking questions. What he learned chilled him. "Every household with prolonged contact is breaking," he reported. "The Pendletons, Their daughter vanished last week, left a note, said she could not marry when her heart belonged to someone impossible. The Ashtons. Mrs. Ashton tried to visit you 12 times in 14 days. Her husband has physicians watching her now. The Merriweathers. Their marriage is imploding. Each blames the other for being too attentive to your home. Bridger met the judge's eyes. Call it influence, call it illness, call it temptation. But people lose their judgment around him. This is madness, Judge Hawthorne whispered. One man cannot destroy a dozen families. And yet, Bridger answered, here we are. The judge made his choice. I'll send him to my plantation in Clark County, out of the city, out of sight. Let distance cure what proximity has poisoned. It was a practical plan, a reasonable plan, a plan already too late, because before arrangements could be completed, events slipped beyond human control. Rebecca Sutherland, Constance's rival at the auction, crossed the final boundary on a humid Wednesday night in mid-August. Martha found her in the servants' quarters, a knife in her hand, Gabriel asleep in the bed before her. I was going to scar him, Rebecca said, with eerie calm once Constable Bridger arrived. If I cannot have him, and if no one else can stop looking at him, then the answer is simple. Her mouth trembled. Make him ugly. Make him ordinary. She was taken away before dawn. By afternoon, her husband, the influential attorney James Sutherland, had arranged for her removal to a private asylum in Milledgeville. The public explanation blamed the heat, a delicate mind, temporary strain. Atlanta accepted the lie because it needed to. But violence, once invited, does not leave politely. 3 nights later, flames swallowed the Hawthorne stables. The horses survived. The building did not. Among the ashes, they found a scrap of paper. Remove the curse from Atlanta. Judge Hawthorne hired guards. Gabriel was confined indoors, invisible, unreachable. It should have cooled the frenzy. Instead, it starved it. And starved hunger turned savage. At midnight, Caroline Pembroke arrived. Not the composed philanthropist of early summer, but a woman undone. Hair fallen loose, gloves missing, breath ragged. She pounded on the door until Constance herself answered. Please, Caroline whispered. I know it's madness. I know it, but I cannot sleep. I cannot eat. Let me see him once. Let me hear his voice. Perhaps then this fever will end. Constance understood, because she carried the same fever. You must go home, she managed. What she wanted was to weep with her. Caroline left. Others came. 4 women in 7 nights. Different faces. Identical desperation. At last, Judge Hawthorne sought professional help. He summoned Benjamin Hayes, a specialist in disorders of the mind. Hayes listened without interruption, fingers steepled, expression tightening with every detail. What you describe resembles collective hysteria, he said. Communities fixating upon a single figure. I have read of such outbreaks in Europe. I never expected to witness one. Examine him, the judge demanded. Tell me if something is wrong with him. Hayes did. He questioned Gabriel for hours, tested memory, judgment, emotion, measured temperament. The verdict should have comforted them. It did not. There is nothing unsound in him, Hayes concluded. He is articulate, aware, even distressed by the damage surrounding him. I find no manipulation, conscious or otherwise. Then what in God's name is happening? The judge asked. Hayes chose his answer with care. These people are not responding to the man. They are responding to what he represents. Restriction, prohibition, desire without permission. He lives inside their homes yet remains untouchable by law and custom. That contradiction is unbearable. Add extraordinary beauty. He spread his hand. You have ignition. It explained everything. It solved nothing. What do you recommend? Remove him from Atlanta, Hayes said. Distance is the only mercy left. But the city moved faster than reason. Margaret vanished. Thursday morning. Her bed untouched. Her wardrobe stripped bare. A note waited on her pillow. I have gone where I can breathe. Do not follow. Constance ran. She already knew. The servants' quarters confirmed it. Gabriel was gone too. The implications were apocalyptic. A daughter of a respected white family fleeing with an enslaved man. If discovered, it meant death for him. Social annihilation for her. Possibly for them all. A quiet search began. Men loyal enough to keep their mouths shut. Constable Bridger led them. Witnesses recalled a young woman boarding a northbound train near Marietta, accompanied by a man whose face was hidden beneath hat and scarf. Chattanooga, Bridger predicted. And after that, the river. For 3 days, the pursuit swallowed Georgia. Back in Atlanta, the Hawthorns lied with shaking grace. Margaret visiting relatives, a change of air, nothing unusual. But secrets like this breathe. And soon the city inhaled. Whispers turned vicious. The women who had once yearned now burned with betrayal. Letters arrived. Accusing, begging, threatening. As if Margaret had stolen something promised to them. Judge Hawthorne aged years in hours. If they are caught together, he told Constance, voice empty, the law will hang him, and our daughter will never recover from the stain. Constance felt herself splitting in two. One half prayed Margaret would be returned. The other, darker, shameful, admired her. Margaret had acted. Constance had only dreamed. They found her outside Dalton, 30 miles from Tennessee. But the story twisted once more. Margaret lay alone in a boarding house, burning with fever. Gabriel had vanished. When clarity returned, she whispered the truth. He left me. Judge Hawthorne closed his eyes. Did he leave word? Margaret nodded, tears breaking free. He said I deserved better than to ruin my life for something impossible, that he never asked for my devotion, or anyone's, that running away with me would not cure what was wrong. She swallowed. He said I wasn't in love with him. I was in love with defiance, with wanting what I was forbidden to want. Her voice collapsed. He understood me better than I understood myself, and in that moment, Constance felt the final illusion fall. Because Gabriel was right. She had not loved the man. She had loved the fire around him, the danger, the door that must never be opened, youth, beauty, forbidden longing. A chance to feel something electric in lives dulled by routine. That was the real contagion. Margaret returned home in silence. The official explanation claimed she had been tending to an ill friend and fallen sick herself. Atlanta's finest accepted the fiction with gracious nods while trading knowing glances over teacups for weeks afterward. Polite society survives by agreeing to lies. But beneath every whisper lingered the same question. Where was Gabriel? The answer arrived 3 weeks later and stunned everyone. Constable Bridger received word from patrols in Clayton County. A man matching Gabriel's description had surrendered himself. He carried no resistance, made no excuses. He asked for one thing: to be sold as far away as humanly possible, west, anywhere beyond the reach of Atlanta. The judge arranged to see him privately. Constance came too. Neither of them spoke much on the journey. What words remained? Gabriel appeared older, though only days had passed. Exhaustion had carved new lines into youth. Why return? The judge asked. You might have reached freedom. Freedom wouldn't change what follows me, Gabriel replied gently. I am not the source of it. I am the surface it lands on. Leaving would only scatter the wreckage somewhere else. Constance tried to explain. You might have spared yourself by being smaller, less visible. A sad smile touched his mouth. Do you believe I chose visibility? He shook his head. I tried to disappear. I spoke little. I kept my eyes lowered. But people were never looking for me. They were looking for themselves. He told them about the myths he had read at Beaumont. Men cursed with beauty, not punished for wrongdoing, but for what others could not master in themselves. They do not see a person, he said. They see permission, or rebellion, or hunger with a face. Tears came to Constance then, unstoppable. We treated you like an object. You bought me at auction, he answered, not cruelly. The law is very clear about what I am. The tragedy is that my existence complicated that certainty. The judge had arranged another sale. Farther, quieter, safer. Before they could finish, Martha burst through the door. Margaret had locked herself inside her room. She was speaking of death. The judge fled. Constance remained. And for the first time, she asked Gabriel the question no one had asked all summer. Did anyone want to know you? He considered. Mrs. Pembroke tried, but she collected facts about me the way one collects rare shells, curiosities, decorations for a dream. And Margaret? Miss Margaret mistook danger for devotion. She was writing a romance. I was only a character. Why leave her? Because those stories end with a rope, he said simply, and a lifetime of disgrace for the woman. When the judge returned, hollow-eyed, the arrangements were final. Protection tonight. Removal tomorrow. Men in the city were angry. Some wanted blood. Gabriel accepted it with a calm that wounded everyone present. Survival had trained him early. A question rose from Bridger. Why did Beaumont sell you? For the same reason you are, Gabriel said. And before that, another plantation. And before that, his mother trying desperately to make him invisible. She told me beauty was dangerous for people like us, he said. I understand now. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Accusing. They prepared to move him. Constance stopped them. She placed a small leather-bound volume in his hands. William Shakespeare. If you must be alone, she whispered, you should not be without words. He thanked her. It was too small a gift for such a large sorrow, but it was something. That night, the city almost burned. Pendleton gathered men. Torches. Righteous fury. They demanded justice for broken daughters and humiliated homes. The judge stood before them and saw not monsters, but neighbors who had lost the map of themselves. Reason, faith, exhaustion. Slowly, they dispersed. Gabriel had already been moved, hidden miles away. Irony, breathing in every direction. The next day, the judge and Constance visited him. The sale to Polk County had collapsed. Fear traveled faster than commerce. A new destination had been arranged. Mississippi, near Vicksburg. A place for those who must be kept apart. A solitary life, Gabriel said. A safer one, the judge answered. And yet, Gabriel replied, the damage is already done. The judge had no argument left. Before departure, Constance asked for privacy. I think it was grief, she confessed. Not love. Grief for unlived lives. For doors that closed long ago. You became the shape of possibility. Gabriel nodded. That is the truest thing I have heard. They parted. A wagon. Dust. Finality. Atlanta sealed its mouth. Newspapers printed nothing. Churches spoke in metaphors. But memory does not require ink. Becca remained in Milledgeville, painting the same face again and again. Elizabeth's marriage endured without warmth. Caroline left for Savannah and built a school from the wreckage of her longing. Margaret married safety and lived carefully. At night, she sometimes remembered the fire. The judge changed, quietly, incrementally. Doubt entering places certainty once ruled. Constance turned to books, to small mercies, to inadequate goodness. It would never balance the scale, but it mattered. Pendleton withered. Sarah built a new life anyway. And Gabriel, rumor carried him everywhere. North, dead. Resold, vanished. Records later revealed the truth. Mississippi, isolation, gardens, 11 years, a fever in 1861, war beginning. Among his possessions, the sonnets, worn thin, and a scrap of writing remembered by someone who could barely read it. A single line survived. Beauty is a prison when the world cannot see the soul inside it. The city tried to forget, but fractures remained. Because for one unbearable summer, everyone had glimpsed the truth beneath the performance.